Introducing the context of Adolf Hitler's last days involves painting a vivid picture of the tumultuous and desperate conditions. This concept is pivotal to understanding the extreme psychological and situational pressures that shaped the decisions and actions. By delving into the context of his final days, we gain insight into his mindset, the collapsing state of Nazi Germany, and the atmosphere within the Führerbunker, where Hitler spent his last moments. Understanding this context is crucial, as it provides a backdrop against which the final dramatic events unfolded. It highlights the isolation and deterioration of a leader who once held sway over much of Europe, offering a microcosm of the larger collapse happening outside the bunker walls. For instance, as Soviet forces closed in on Berlin in April 1945, the city was subjected to relentless bombardment, contributing to the apocalyptic setting within the confines of the bunker. Hitler's diminishing circle of loyalists, including Eva Braun, Joseph Goebbels, and select military officers, faced the inevitable downfall of their regime. Two key examples illustrate this context. First, the battle. Berlin exemplifies the external chaos that paralleled the internal disarray of the Nazi command, the fierce street. Two-street combat in the city underscored the desperation of Germany's military situation. Second, Hitler's increasingly erratic decisions, fueled by paranoia and despair, reflected the internal decay. He issued orders to imaginary armies, showcasing a disconnect from reality, and refused to negotiate surrender, sealing the fate of both himself and the city. Opinions on this period are varied, with some historians viewing Hitler's final days as a tragic, albeit inevitable end, while others interpret them as a fitting demise for a dictator responsible for immense suffering. However, understanding, as the Allies closed in on Berlin, Hitler retreated to this fortified location, seeking refuge from the chaos above and the inevitable defeat looming over Nazi Germany. The Führerbunker was a claustrophobic, concrete fortress where Hitler spent his last days, surrounded by a dwindling group of loyalists. Its significance lies in its role as the setting for the culmination of Hitler's reign and the Nazi regime's demise. First, it symbolizes the profound isolation of Hitler during his final days, both physically and psychologically, as he became increasingly detached from the reality of Germany's defeat. Secondly, it serves as the backdrop for the dramatic and tragic end of one of history's most notorious dictators, marking a crucial historical turning point as World War II drew to an end in Europe. Real-world examples that illustrate this include the infamous events of April 30th, 1945, when Hitler, realizing the fall of Berlin was imminent, took his own life in the bunker. Accompanied by his newlywed wife, Eva Braun, this act signified the collapse of the Nazi regime and paved the way for the Allied victory. Another example is the testimony of individuals who were present in the bunker, like Traudl Junge, one of Hitler's secretaries, who provided detailed accounts of the atmosphere and events leading up to his suicide. Opinions supporting the importance of the bunker often highlight its symbolic representation of the ultimate futility of Hitler's ambitions and the destructive path of totalitarian regimes. However, challenges and controversies surround this analysis. Some argue that too much focus on the demise of Hitler risks overshadowing the broader context of the war and its impact on millions of lives. The Shi'ism of the bunker connects to other aspects of Hitler's final moments by underscoring the drastic change in his leadership style. The isolation and pressure intensified his paranoia and erratic decision-making, influencing the final military strategies that hastened Germany's defeat. Furthermore, it provides a poignant setting for examining the psychological decline of a leader driven by fanaticism and despair. In essence, the bunker. Hitler's final refuge is not just a physical location, but a symbol of the end of an era, offering valuable insights into the psychology of power, the impact of isolation, and the inevitable consequences of tyranny. In the final days of World War II, as Adolf Hitler's regime crumbled around him, he retreated into the depths of the Führerbunker beneath the Reich Chancellery in Berlin. The bunker became the stage for his last moments, and it was populated by a cast of key figures who played significant roles as his allies and confidants. These individuals were not only pivotal to Hitler's final days, but also provide a glimpse into the power dynamics and psychological landscape of the Third Reich's collapse. The concept of key figures in the bunker refers to those individuals who were present with Hitler in his last stand, including high-ranking Nazi officials, military officers, and close aides. Their significance lies in their ability to influence Hitler's final decisions and how their actions and loyalty, or lack thereof, impacted the Nazi regime's swift disintegration. For instance, Martin Bormann, Hitler's private secretary, was a powerful influence in the bunker, often acting as a gatekeeper to Hitler, while Joseph Goebbels, the Minister of Propaganda, remained a fervent supporter until the end, valuing ideology over life itself, as evidenced by his tragic family decisions. These figures illustrate the complexities of allegiance and belief in a regime on the brink of collapse. The presence of Eva Braun, Hitler's longtime companion, also highlights the personal aspect of Hitler's final hours, as they married just before their joint suicide. This act of union in the face of imminent defeat underscores the intense personal bonds at play amidst the political and military unraveling. There are varied opinions on these figures, with some historians viewing them as mere opportunists who clung to power, while others see them as true believers in Nazi ideology until the bitter end. This dichotomy presents a challenge in understanding their motivations and the culture within the bunker during those last days. Additionally, some accounts from the bunker are controversial due to differing eyewitness testimonies and the chaos that reigned as Berlin fell. This focus on the key figures in the bunker not only sheds light on Hitler's psychological state and decision-making process, but also connects to the broader narrative of loyalty and betrayal that defined the Nazi regime's downfall. It highlights themes of human resilience, denial, and the inevitable disintegration of a regime built on destructive ideology. Understanding these dynamics provides valuable insights into the complexities of leadership and ideology when faced with the ultimate consequences of war and tyranny. The heading, "The Encroaching Enemy: Soviet Advance on Berlin," refers to the critical phase in the final days of World War II, when Soviet forces were closing in on Berlin, sealing the fate of Adolf Hitler's regime. This advance was part of the broader push by the Allies to defeat Nazi Germany and marked a turning point as the Soviet Red Army moved decisively into German territory. The Soviet advance on Berlin is essential to understanding the context and backdrop against which Adolf Hitler spent his last moments. The encroachment of Soviet forces symbolized the imminent collapse of the Third Reich and the end of Hitler's ambitions. The significance of the Soviet advance lies in its sheer momentum and the deteriorating morale of German troops and leadership. As Soviet forces surrounded Berlin, it became evident that Nazi Germany would not survive. The psychological impact of the encroaching enemy contributed significantly to Hitler's decision-making in his final days, leading to his eventual suicide. This advance was not just a military maneuver, but a psychological onslaught that emphasized the futility of continued resistance, thus shaping the closing chapter of Hitler's life. One poignant example of the Soviet advance's impact is the Battle of the Silo Heights, where Soviet forces launched a massive artillery barrage and broke through German defenses, paving the way to Berlin. Another example is the encirclement strategy employed by the Soviets, cutting off escape routes and supply lines, further isolating the city and compounding the sense of desperation within Hitler's bunker. Opinions from historians suggest that the Soviet advance was a critical factor in forcing Hitler's hand, as he faced the reality that his envisioned thousand-year Reich was crumbling. The relentless pressure exerted by the Soviets is often seen as a catalyst for the dramatic decisions made in the bunker, including Hitler's eventual suicide. Nevertheless, there are controversies and alternate viewpoints regarding the conduct of Soviet troops during the advance, with reports of atrocities that have sparked debates on wartime ethics and post-war justice. Some argue that these actions, while brutal, were a response to Nazi aggression on Soviet soil. The encroaching Soviet forces were a vital influence on other aspects of Hitler's final days, intensifying an atmosphere of paranoia and despair. This advance interconnected with the internal chaos among Hitler's ranks, as loyalties shifted and high-ranking officials sought to secure their fates in a post-Nazi world. Overall, the Soviet advance on Berlin was a pivotal, dramatic backdrop to the last moments of Adolf Hitler, embodying the collapse of his imperial dreams. Thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe. Stay tuned for more.